All right, let's look at another brilliant endgame by the world champion, Capablanca. Here, Capablanca has the white pieces, and it's white to move. If you'd like to pause and evaluate the position or come up with a plan, now's a good time to do that. Okay, if you took some time to evaluate, you may have noticed that white is up a pawn here, and okay, white is winning with many different moves. The simple sort of clamp h5 would be a winning move, even though it gives the move to black in some ways. There are certain king moves that would also be sufficient. King d3 is not going to change the outcome of the game. But the move that Capablanca played is the somewhat unexpected break b4. A really nice idea. Here, black continued a takes b4, and it's worth looking at if c captures b4. How could white respond? Well, the idea is, okay, the d pawn will fall, and then no matter what black does next, the breakthrough on the king side with a 4-3 majority of simply playing g5 will be decisive. And this is going to be similar to like the lines in the main line with a takes b4, where a passed pawn will emerge over here, and black's king, okay, will have time to deal with that passed pawn, but won't have time to deal with this one. Or vice versa, could stop this one but not the other one. So it's kind of a seesaw back and forth where passed pawns emerging on both wings will make the defensive job of the black king an impossible task. So after this really beautiful break pawn b4, black here played ax b4. This is from an endgame from the famous tournament in Hastings in 1919. Capablanca's opponent is Condé, who I am not super familiar with here, but okay, it's hard to criticize a takes b4. And so now simply a5, and this pawn is off to the races. Black's king can give chase with king c7, but now, just as before, the break on the king side g5 will create a problem for black on the opposite wing. After g5, pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes. We have a very important idea here. This 2-to-1 scenario. White will be able to create a passed pawn here with g6, and there's no way for black to prevent that. It's important to notice, though, that here h5 would not be winning. It looks winning because this pawn is so close to queening and would beat this pawn to coronation. However, black could now play the same trick on white that we were hoping to play on black, which is to play this move b3. When all of a sudden, white's king has to come back to d3 to prevent this pawn from queening, stepping into the square of that pawn, right? So king d3, and now, okay, white's king will be able to prevent this pawn from queening, but all of a sudden, eyes back on the king side, comes g4. And, okay, this will be somewhat messy, but both sides will promote. And, let's say h8, g1. And with queens on the board, I don't know, it's possible, probably equal, probably a draw, but black might even be slightly better here. Okay, and because of that, h5 would be a mistake. Instead, simply hx g5, creating this 2-on-1 majority and the threat of a passed pawn. It's important to note that this also removes the possibility of black having a runner on the king side that white's king has to worry about. Okay, and so here black plays b3 anyway, forcing white's hand, king d3. Once again, the king is now inside the square of that pawn, so we have that one under lock and key. And black plays king d7, stepping back to the king side to try and eye this 2-on-1 situation. But Capablanca simply continues with g6, and after pawn takes, black can choose. He could stay inside the square of this pawn, or he could enter the square of this pawn. But he cannot do both. If he runs after the pawn on g6, then the pawn on a4 will start to run, and if he runs after the pawn on a4, then the pawn on g6 will start to run. I really enjoyed this endgame. I thought, okay, the starting position here, white has a few different ways to win, but the unexpected break b4 is very elegant and forcing, and yeah, I wanted to share this with you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Please make sure to like and subscribe.